Airplanes can press strangers into forced closeness, and sometimes that closeness exposes truths people would rather keep hidden. On this flight, truths surfaced quickly, sharpened by authority, impatience, and a judgment that arrived long before any facts did. The cabin buzzed with low conversation as passengers settled into their seats, overhead bins clicking shut one by one. Soft blue lighting washed over the rows, giving the space a calm that felt fragile. Near the middle of the plane, Nia Carter stood in the aisle, her body angled protectively around her 6-month-old son, Malik, strapped securely against her chest. His tiny fingers curled into her jacket, his breathing steady and warm. Nia checked the seat numbers again, though she already knew them by heart. She had checked them at the gate. She had checked them while boarding. She checked them now because experience had taught her that certainty did not always prevent confrontation. Seat 14, be her seat. A flight attendant stopped in front of her, blocking the aisle. She was tall, crisp in her uniform, her expression tight with practiced authority. "Ma'am, you'll need to move," the attendant said. Nia blinked. "This is my seat." The attendant glanced at Malik, then back at Nia, her eyes narrowing slightly. "You can't sit here. I'm assigned to this seat," Nia replied, keeping her voice calm. "I paid extra to sit here." Passengers nearby paused, the rustle of movement slowing. A man across the aisle leaned back to watch. A woman behind Nia craned her neck. The attendant crossed her arms. "This row is reserved." "For whom?" Nia asked. "For passengers who need comfort," the attendant said, hesitating just enough for the word to carry weight. Nia felt her stomach tighten. "I need comfort. I'm traveling alone with a baby." The attendant exhaled sharply. "You'll need to move to the back." "Why?" Nia asked. "I followed every rule." The attendant's voice dropped, but it sharpened. "Because other passengers might complain." Nia looked around. No one had complained. "Not yet. I'm not bothering anyone," Nia said quietly. Malik stirred slightly, sensing the tension. The attendant straightened. "Please don't make this difficult." A man a few rows up scoffed. "Just move already," he muttered. Nia's face flushed, but she stood her ground. "I'm not moving unless you can explain why." The attendant's jaw tightened. "You're holding up Borden." Another passenger spoke, louder this time. "Why is she even sitting there with the baby?" That was when the judgment became unmistakable. Nia felt heat rise behind her eyes, but she refused to let it spill. She had learned to hold herself steady in moments like this. She had learned that emotion would be used against her faster than silence ever would. "I paid for this seat," she repeated. "If there's a problem, call your supervisor." The attendant hesitated, eyes flicking around. Several phones were now raised subtly, screens glowing. "Fine," the attendant snapped. "But if the baby cries, don't say, 'I didn't warn you.'" She stepped aside reluctantly. Nia sat down carefully, easing Malik into a more comfortable position. Her hands trembled slightly, but she focused on his breathing. The plane doors closed. The engines roared to life. For a few minutes, the tension seemed to fade, swallowed by the routine of takeoff. Nia stared straight ahead, jaw set, heart pounding. She told herself to stay calm, to make herself small, to avoid drawing attention. It didn't last. As the plane reached cruising altitude, Malik began to fuss. Just a soft sound at first. Nia bounced him gently, whispering soothing words. She reached into her bag for his pacifier. The flight attendant reappeared almost immediately. "There it is," she said loudly. "I knew this would happen." Nia looked up sharply. "He's a baby. I'm handling it." "You're disturbing other passengers?" the attendant replied. No one complained. Some passengers watched, others looked away. "I'm doing my best," Nia said. "This isn't appropriate seating for a mother with an infant," the attendant insisted. Nia's voice trembled now, not with fear, but with restraint. "Then why did you sell me the seat?" The attendant didn't answer. Instead, she leaned closer. "You need to move now." A man across the aisle spoke up. "She has a right to be there." The attendant shot him a warning look. "Sir, this doesn't concern you." "It does, when you're singling her out," he replied. More murmurs spread. Phones rose higher. The attendant's face tightened. This is becoming disruptive. Nia felt the moment tipping. She knew this edge, the one where dignity was framed as defiance. "Please," Nia said softly, "just let me stay." The attendant straightened abruptly. "I'm calling the captain." Gasps rippled through the cabin. Minutes later, another crew member arrived, followed by the lead purser. The situation was explained quickly, though not fairly. The purser turned to Nia. "Ma'am, is there a problem?" "Yes," Nia said steadily. "I'm being asked to give up my seat without cause." The purser examined her boarding pass, then nodded. "She's assigned here." The attendant stiffened. "But she's allowed to remain," the purser said firmly. The attendant flushed, frustration flashing across her face. "She's making people uncomfortable." The purser looked around. "Is anyone uncomfortable?" Silence. Phones continued recording. The purser turned back to Nia. "You're fine, ma'am. I apologize." The attendant stepped back, visibly angry. 5 minutes later, a notification pinged across social media. A video titled "Flight Attendant Denies Seat to Black Mother" began spreading rapidly. By the time the plane landed, the airline's corporate office was already aware. As passengers disembarked, several stopped to speak to Nia, offering apologies, support, quiet admiration. The attendant avoided eye contact. Later that evening, Nia sat at home, Malik asleep on her chest, her phone buzzing nonstop. Messages, articles, calls. The story was everywhere. But what mattered most wasn't the exposure. It was that she hadn't moved, and in 5 minutes, the truth had been seen. That night, after the noise of notifications finally slowed, Nia sat on the edge of her bed in the dim glow of a bedside lamp. Malik slept peacefully, unaware of how many strangers now knew his name, his face, his presence at the center of something much larger than a flight dispute. Nia brushed her fingers gently over his back, grounding herself in the steady rhythm of his breathing. The video had spread faster than she could process, clips stitched together, headlines sharpened for impact, opinions stacked like luggage, heavy and unclaimed. Some praised her calm. Others questioned her tone, her choices, her right to speak at all. Nia scrolled briefly, then locked her phone and set it face down. She had learned long ago that visibility was a double-edged blade. The next morning, an email arrived from the airline, carefully worded, apologetic, vague. It spoke of miscommunication and reviewing internal policies. It offered flight credits and a promise to do better. Nia read it twice, then closed her laptop. She wasn't interested in credits. She wanted accountability. She wanted the truth acknowledged without being softened for comfort. Later that day, a reporter called, then another. Nia declined most requests, choosing her words carefully with the few she answered. She spoke not with anger, but with clarity. She described the moment she was told she didn't belong. She described how quickly authority can become accusation when filtered through bias. She never raised her voice. That restraint unsettled people more than rage ever could. In the days that followed, the airline released a statement announcing the flight attendant had been placed on leave pending investigation. Training programs were mentioned. Commitments were made. The news cycle moved on, hungry for the next outrage. But Nia didn't. At the grocery store, a woman stopped her in the cereal aisle. "I saw your video," she said quietly. "Thank you." At the pediatrician's office, a nurse squeezed her hand a little longer than necessary. "You handled that with so much grace." Grace, the word followed her everywhere, heavy with expectation, as if composure were the requirement for being treated fairly. One afternoon, while Malik napped, Nia sat at her kitchen table and wrote everything down. Not for publication, not for anyone else, for herself. Every detail, every word spoken, every look. She wrote until her hand cramped and her chest felt lighter. She thought about how easily the situation could have ended differently if she had raised her voice, if she had stepped aside, if no one had filmed. She wondered how many times it already had ended that way for others. Weeks later, Nia boarded another plane. This time, she felt the tension before anything even happened. Her shoulders tightened as she walked down the aisle. She noted the glances, the quick assessments. Malik slept against her chest again, blissfully unaware. She reached her seat and sat. No one stopped her. Still, she didn't relax until the plane was in the air. Halfway through the flight, a different flight attendant stopped beside her, younger, softer, nervous, almost. "I just wanted to say," the attendant whispered, glancing around, "I saw what happened to you. I'm sorry." Nia looked up, surprised. "Thank you. You shouldn't have had to go through that," the attendant added. "No," Nia agreed. "I shouldn't have. The attendant hesitated, then smiled gently and moved on. Nia watched her walk away, thinking about how systems were made of people. Some learned, some resisted, some stood silently between the two. When they landed, Nia felt something unfamiliar. Not relief, not pride, resolve. That evening, she opened her laptop again, not to read comments, but to write an email. Then another. She connected with advocacy groups, with legal advisors, with organizations that had reached out quietly after the video went viral. She realized she had a choice now. To retreat or to step forward. She chose the latter. Months later, Nia stood in a small conference room, Malik playing quietly on the floor beside her. Across the table sat airline representatives, policy advisors, people who spoke in procedures and metrics. Nia spoke in experiences. She told them what it felt like to be denied without reason, to be framed as a problem for existing, to be treated as a disruption instead of a customer. She watched some of them shift uncomfortably. Others nodded. A few took notes furiously. Change, she knew, was slow. But it didn't start without friction. When the meeting ended, one woman lingered. "I never thought about it that way," she admitted. "That's the problem," Nia replied gently. That night, as Malik slept, Nia stood by the window, city lights flickering outside. She thought about the flight attendant who tried to move her, about the passengers who spoke up, about the ones who didn't. She thought about how quickly truth could surface when someone refused to be silent. Nia kissed her son's forehead softly. One day, she knew, he would ask about the video, about the plane, about why his mother's face appeared on screens she didn't control. When that day came, she would tell him the truth. She would tell him that sometimes the world decides who belongs before asking for proof. And she would tell him that staying seated, even when pressured to move, can change more than just one moment. It can expose everything. In the weeks that followed, life slowly settled into a new rhythm, though it never returned to what it had been before. Nia noticed the difference in small, unexpected ways. A longer pause before people spoke to her. A carefulness in questions that once would have been casual. Even friends seemed unsure whether to treat her as the same person or as someone transformed by circumstance. She was both. One afternoon, while walking Malik through the park, a woman approached her hesitantly, pushing a stroller of her own. She looked tired, nervous, and determined all at once. "I hope this isn't strange," the woman said, "but I just wanted to tell you that because of what you did, I didn't move seats last week when someone told me I should." Nia studied her face. "How did that go?" "I stayed," the woman said, a small smile breaking through. "And nothing terrible happened. But it felt big." Nia nodded slowly. "It is big, every time." As the woman walked away, Nia felt something shift inside her. The story had never been just hers. It had moved outward, quietly reshaping moments she would never witness. Later that evening, after Malik was asleep, Nia sat on the couch scrolling through old photos on her phone, pictures of earlier flights, earlier versions of herself. She could see the difference now, not in her posture or expression, but in her certainty. She had always known she belonged. Now she knew she didn't need permission to prove it. The world, she understood, would continue to test that belief. In airports, in offices, in classrooms her son would one day walk into with questions already aimed at him. The thought tightened her chest, but it also strengthened her resolve. She began speaking more openly, not to crowds, but to individuals, other parents, young professionals, airline staff who reached out privately. She told them the same thing every time, that fairness shouldn't depend on composure, that dignity wasn't earned by silence, that bias often hid behind procedure. Some listened, some didn't, but the words were out there now. On a quiet Sunday morning, Nia packed another bag. Another flight awaited. Malik babbled happily as she buckled him in, unaware of the significance his presence had come to hold. At the airport gate, announcements echoed overhead. People lined up. Order returned, as it always did. When boarding began, Nia stood, adjusted her son, and stepped forward without hesitation. No one stopped her. She found her seat, settled in, and exhaled slowly. The familiar hum of the plane wrapped around her, steady and indifferent. For the first time in a long while, she felt something close to peace. As the plane lifted into the sky, Nia rested her head back and closed her eyes. She knew there would be more moments ahead, more challenges, more quiet tests of belonging, but she also knew this: she would remain seated. And each time she did, the world would be forced, even briefly, to make room.